Whether it's in starting a club or in starting a school or changing a classroom, you can't predict everything that's going to happen, so you have to be open to rolling with the punches.
Welcome back to Educator University. As teachers, we have a lot of insights on how education should be done. But have you ever thought about using that to build something, maybe a new program, or even a school? Today's guest, Marcia Familio-Enright, has taken that challenge and started not just one, but two schools. Marcia founded the Council Oak Montessori School, leading it for 27 years, and now serves as president and program director at Reliance College. In today's episode, she shares her journey to become a school founder and gives practical advice for educators ready to innovate and lead. Welcome, Marcia.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so good to have you here. So you founded a Montessori school quite a few years back, and now are you in the stages of founding a college? What was the moment that you realized you wanted to create your own schools?
When I realized that there was no Montessori elementary school for my children, because I had decided years ago that that was the kind of education I wanted for them, and there was nothing in the area. Actually, what happened was there was a small school, and they had to move, and we tried to get them to move to our area. We live in the farthest southwest neighborhood of Chicago, and it's very Montessori friendly, but it has one of the oldest preschools in the Chicago area here. But the owner of that school didn't want to move here, so we had found a location already, and I turned to my friends and I said, "What do you think? Should we start our own school?" So I had met a fabulous Montessori teacher at the preschool that my kids went to, and she had gotten a job an hour away, and I thought maybe she'd like to go to a job down the block from her. So it all worked out.
Wow, and then you just said, let's start a school. You just did it.
Yeah. Yeah. We had the space, we had the teacher. She recruited some other teachers. The preschool allowed us to publicize to their kindergarten class about the opening of the elementary school, because we opened as an elementary school first. And there was already a lot of interest in the neighborhood in Montessori. So all those things worked to our advantage.
Yeah, I think you make it sound so like straightforward and it makes sense, but I think a lot of teachers listening are like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds impossible. How did you do this? What were all the logistics?" I'm kind of curious, just from your perspective, like what helped you make that leap to just decide to build a school?
I'm very good at organizing things and at seeing the talents of other people and where they would really thrive. So I think that helped a lot. I had some extra money, so I used that to loan the school the money for the materials. And I knew that otherwise I'd be sending my children to a very expensive traditional private school that I wasn't as on board with. So this was a great motivation for me, and I had the time. So that's how I ended up doing it. And we got the idea in March of 1990. We opened the school in September. And everybody just was very excited. Everybody recruited to be involved in it, whether it was parents or teachers, were very excited about it, and they all pulled together and worked like crazy over the summer.
Yeah, and it sounds like you were involved for quite a bit of time. Like 27 years is kind of beyond your kids, so you kind of stayed around and kept the school going after your kids
Did.
graduated, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we had various problems or crises along the way, and so I wanted to make sure that the school continued its existence, because I had seen so many children thrive in the program over the years. I mean, I had parents writing to me that their child loved school so much that when they're sick, they lie to the parents so they won't miss school. I had children who had terrible things going on at home, but the school was like their haven. And you just saw the children thrive in the classroom. I mean, you can see it when in a Montessori classroom that's well run, the children are basically in flow or in the zone. The way people talk about it, there's kind of learning that they're doing there is so suited to their cognitive and emotional needs that they become very concentrated in their attention on it, and they love the work.
Yeah. So you kind of created this school to fill a gap in what you saw wasn't being reached in the market or in the educational place. What were the gaps that you were seeing, you're thinking for your children and also for children in general? Like you're mentioning some of the Montessori techniques. What other gaps were you seeing that you wanted to fill with your school?
Well, traditional school, number one, the way it's organized isn't especially suited to the developmental needs of children, the way that the education is delivered. And the Montessori system and I don't know how much your audience knows about it, is an entirely different way of organizing education, in which the developmental level of the student is very well considered in every part of the curriculum. And the classroom is organized with thousands of specially designed materials like games through which the children learn their concepts, the knowledge that they need, whether it's art or practical life or mathematics, English, all of those things. And the child is very individually focused. So the teacher's there to figure out what does that individual child need and what kind of lesson should she give them next? Should they give them, are they ready for this math lesson? Are they ready for this history lesson? And it's super well thought out. The child has a lot of freedom in what they do, but it's freedom in a structured environment. So it's within limits. And the children become extreme, meaning that they behave themselves because they want to do the next thing that they're capable of doing in the classroom. It's just so enjoyable for them.
Yeah, actually, I haven't had a Montessori person on yet, so you're kind of giving us a little bit of an overview for what it is. So it's very individualized and very personalized instruction, and it makes students excited to learn, it sounds like.
hmm So the classroom is organized with all the materials arrayed on low shelves around the classroom in the domain of subjects. So arts in one place, maths another place, languages another place, and in the order of their difficulty. So the child knows at any point where they are in their curriculum. And the child comes into the classroom and the teacher observes what they are working on and makes an assessment from day to day about, oh, this child needs to work on this child needs to work on that. And she will or he will introduce the child to the material that's necessary. And there's lots of places for the children to work, tables, desks, the floor on mats. They can work by themselves or they can work together. And interestingly, because they're not forced to work together, they tend to like to work together. And Montessori had made the remark that in a Montessori classroom, there's lots of conversation, although you'll also see them be very quiet and concentrating on their material. But she said, well, we learn so much from each other in adult life by talking to each other. Why do we make children be silent in the classroom? But the talk has to be, like I said, freedom in a structured environment. The talk has to be fairly closely related to what they're doing. And so the children go to the shelves in the morning, they pick out what they want to work on, they bring it to their space, they work on it as long as they want, and then they have to go put it back. And there's a lot of order in the classroom, and the child has to follow certain principles of how do you behave. And the teacher sets up the shelving in the classroom so that, for example, as much as possible, she doesn't have to be correcting the children about running around, but the children environment naturally directs them how to walk properly. So as much as possible, the materials too are what we would call self-correcting. If you have for example, in the preschool, which we call Children's House, we have a material that's a long block of wood with different size cylinders in it and with handles. And the child takes all them out, and then they have to put them back. But if they put one of them back in the wrong hole, then they see in the end that the other one's not fitting properly. So it's self-correcting. They can see for themselves whether they've achieved the solution to the problem. And that really, really encourages students to be independent and to be looking at things for themselves and how do I understand it and how do I solve the problem. Interestingly, there's very many quite famous people who went to Montessori school, and it's not an accident. Highly creative people like the Google founders went there, Jeff Bezos, Julia Child, Anne Frank, and there's a whole long list. And recently, a book came out called The Geek Way by a researcher from MIT Business School. And it was summarized what happens, why the tech companies are particularly creative these days. And one of the things he brought up was the fact that there was a study by other MIT researchers looking at the background of many, many tech founders around the US, maybe internationally too, I'm not sure. And they were surprised to find this unusual number who had gone to Montessori schools. And then the author of the book, The Geek Way, had gone to a Montessori school. So he connected the dots and he said, well, it's because in a Montessori school, you're very self-directed, curiosity is encouraged, your innovation is encouraged, and these people carry that the rest of their life when they go to that school, and they brought it up to their businesses.
That is so interesting. I did not know that about those people. So that's very interesting, the connections that they made. That's a really good correlation, actually, to show that this type of schooling does create that creative mind and critical thinking. You created the school with the Montessori, the Council Oak Montessori, and then you were so inspired, you moved that into Reliance College. And I'm curious, do they have a similar strategies or similar philosophies? Is that kind of what you were thinking in terms of embracing this new chapter of opening Reliance College?
Definitely. My own interest. So I was running the school, but I wasn't teaching there. I mean, if I was teaching, I was teaching the adults that were working in the school. I was helping them understand what they needed to be doing. But my own interest in teaching was always young adults. So in 2009, I created a week-long summer program called The Great Connections, in which I brought together a number of things that I thought young people really needed. And part of that was using my Montessori philosophy of education, bringing it up to the high school college level. What is the developmental need of high school and college students? What are they seeking? What do they need to learn? And how can we help them do that? So it seemed to me that a major part of it was learning how to be able to understand anything they read or anything they came across in the world, no matter what the subject was, how to be able to understand it for themselves. So a big part of the program is reading texts and looking at material from across the domains of knowledge. So from physics to poetry in a week, short text, reading them and using a special form of what's called a Socratic seminar to dialogue with each other about the text to really understand it. And in that kind of dialogue, the teacher is not telling the student anything about the text. The teacher is helping the student understand the text for themselves. And the discussion is driven by the students' questions about, well, what does this text mean? What does this sentence mean? What does the overall idea mean? How is it connected to my life? How is it connected to other things I know? So the teacher's guiding and facilitating that kind of thinking. And the students, by learning to talk to each other, we follow a very special set of principles in which they have to carefully listen to what the other people are saying and then respond to that instead of just, you know how a lot of people in a discussion would just sit there and think about what they want to say next. And they're not really paying attention to the other person. But when you do pay attention, you respond to them. It's called active listening, which is an immensely useful skill when you grow up and you work, because understanding what other people are saying and trying to really connect with them is extremely powerful when you're working in a team. So they learned a whole bunch of skills in these program, and also would I include other activities in this. For example, I would talk to them about, we always hold it in Chicago. I would talk to them about the history of the city of Chicago and how did it get here? Because most people take for granted everything around them and they don't ask themselves, well, how did these buildings get here? How did the shape of this city get here? And Chicago started out as just this swampy land next to a river on Lake Michigan, but it had a very strategic position because you could get from Europe all the way down to New Orleans by going through the Chicago River and other things. Anyway, I would talk to them about the history, and then we'd go on an architecture tour because Chicago's a big architecture center. So we'd go on an architecture tour, walking around the city. They would learn about, well, okay, these ideas I talked to them about, what do they actually look like in real life? And then I'd send them on a architectural treasure hunt where they have to find, in a team, they have to go around the city and find different locations.
Yeah, what an incredible kind of experience to embrace the place they're at. I personally have actually been on one of those tours as well. I went on the one that's in the boat, and you go and see all the different buildings. In college, I did that as well. It was so fun. And like you said, I had lived in Chicago, I mean, the area for so long, but never really appreciated all the things. So yeah, that critical thinking piece and really appreciating where you are.
Since the first year that we opened, which is 2009, about 75% of the students every year would tell me that their life had been transformed by the program. And it had a lot of the components were their increased confidence, their ability to, they learned how to reason many different ways by listening to how other people approach the same thing. They learned how to talk to other people very effectively. They made great friends. And it was interesting because I recently spoke to an alumni who's in his 30s now, but he came in 2009 a couple times later, and he said that the reason why you get so connected to the other people is that in class you're learning how their mind works about the material that you're talking about, and then after class you're getting to know them personally, so you end up knowing them probably better than almost anyone else you know.
It's nice to have those connections that are real and lasting and learning how to make those connections. And I think looking at your kind of how you did things. You had Montessori and you kind of expanded that into your college and you created this program. And then you're moving into Reliance College, which has this bigger view almost. I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious, has there been challenges with building schools? Have there been some things that have been the biggest challenges?
Well, one of the biggest challenges, I think, and I've observed this in other schools, one of the biggest challenges is that if the person who is the teacher often doesn't have the frame of mind or skill set to be the business owner, because the school is a business and you have to be able to think like a business person. How do we organize things? How do we make sure we have a profit? I mean, even if you're a nonprofit, you basically need a profit in the sense you need to be making money in order to stay in business, right? How do you deal with the adults around you? Often teachers are really great with the children that they work with, great teachers are, but they might not know how to equally interact with adults. And that's really important because not only do they have to interact with their staff successfully, but also with all of the parents. And one of the big challenges I found was that parents' egos tend to be very closely tied to their children. And so you have to tread very lightly in interacting with them about their children. They don't always receive negative feedback about the children very well, and so you have to be skilled at how do you talk to them about it. So that's a big problem. And there's a lot of ups and downs. If you're in a private school, there's a lot of ups and downs in the economy that affect a private school and regulation. So somebody who's got the mindset to deal with all those business elements it's important to have them. I know there was one group that was organizing a bunch of Montessori schools. They bought the Montessori schools and they did all they had like a headquarters that did all the administration, and then the teachers and the people running the school could really focus on the educational elements. So those were some of the biggest challenges.
Because there really is two different skill sets there. There's a skill set of teaching in the classroom and a skill set of running a school, which is kind of two different things at times. So,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
interesting. Years ago, I was at an independent schools conference in which the head of it said on the plane there he sat next to two men who worked in a factory together. One was the boss, and the other one was like a manager. And the boss was giving the manager a kind of a review about his performance, and it was quite harsh. But the manager it didn't seem to bother him that much. But the head of the independent school organization thought to himself, my gosh, I could never talk like that to teachers when I gave them a review. And of course, and he said, and this makes sense, the reason is because teachers have a very sensitive, emotional mindset to deal with the children. So you have to be able to interact with them differently when you're giving them feedback.
Yeah, it's important to think about when if you're thinking about moving into founding a school, it's also thinking about you're going to be managing teachers, and that's the personalities you're going to have to maybe work with. And you mentioned earlier that you're pretty good. You have a natural knack for working with people. Has that served you well in terms of founding these schools and finding the right team to bring together?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I would put it that I have a natural knack for working well with people, but I am good at getting to know somebody and recognizing what their strengths are and their interests, and then finding the right place for them to be working so that they're enjoying what they're doing. And over the years, I learned a lot about how to make sure that I was giving people the information, my team the information and the feedback that they needed to succeed and to work well. And then there's always the problem of when hiring is always a difficult problem because you only know the person a little bit. And especially with a school, you're hiring them and it's a big problem if they leave in the middle of the school year. So that's an extra problem that you have because who do you get to replace them in the middle of the school year? It's pretty difficult. So that's a tough problem. You have to develop a lot of skill and knowledge and methodology about how do you go about deciding that a person is a good fit for your school. And I made many mistakes over the years with that, and it was difficult because of it. So,
Yeah, but there's a lot of trial and error figuring out the right personalities for also the
yeah,
team. Sometimes the team needs a certain personality to help them in like
yes,
that school or that grade level or something. So that is
yeah,
hard to think about all the pieces.
yeah. Well, one thing, here's a silly thing, but it's very important. One thing that worked that I discovered over time was that hiring somebody who lived locally was much more successful. They tended to become much more invested in the school because it helped them serve their family needs as well as instead of a long commute and they weren't very connected in the community and all that kind of thing. The local people tended to stay a lot longer than anybody else. So,
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I think the commute too can make it be a big deal if you're driving an hour each way. It's
yeah,
kind of exhausting. So just very pragmatically in that way as well.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think teachers are listening and they're thinking, okay, maybe I'm thinking about making a new program. Maybe not a school, maybe a school, maybe a program, and they're thinking about creating something new. Are there skills that you can see? You work with teachers a lot, it sounds like, that you think, okay, as a teacher, you have these skills that would translate well to founding something, whether it's a school or a program. You would probably have things that would overlap in terms of skills.
Yeah, I mean, if the person has a mind for has some knowledge or interest in how businesses run and knows how to access resources about businesses. For example, I had somebody, this was years ago, suggest that I use this program called QuickBooks to do our accounting. This was a huge help. This was way back in 1990 before there were a lot of computer applications. This was this was a huge help in keeping the books because we were really small at that point. I was doing almost everything. I had to learn, I had never taken accounting and I had to learn a lot about accounting at that point. If at all possible, of course, if you can delegate it to somebody who is expert at that or knows or likes doing books, if you can even teach, there's a lot of people who enjoy, once you teach them how to do the books, they really enjoy the whole process of making everything reconcile and keeping all the details. So that's a matter of knowing who you've got working for you. And so yeah, so you need to know about business or at least educate yourself about it, how businesses are run, what whole idea of profit and loss, about accounting, about hiring. Um, it's things you can learn along the way. If you have some people that you already know want to work on it together, you can learn a lot of these things along the way, especially if you're starting small. So I wouldn't I wouldn't want to scare anybody off from trying it. You definitely can figure out how to do it. And there's so many tools these days, so many tools, online tools that you can use to keep track of people, to send out information to your clients, to your parents, and advertise on all these social media platforms. It really makes everything a lot easier in that respect.
As teachers, we already have some communication skills. We may already have organization skills that we can, like, we may not realize. I talk to teachers who are thinking about even just changing subjects, or when I say programs, sometimes the teachers want to start a club and they're like, I don't know if I can do it. And I'm like, we're starting schools here. Like, you can start a club, you
Yes.
can do this. You don't have to have like all the pieces together all right away. You have a lot of the skills already there to start whatever you want to start. If you put your mind to it, it kind of feels like what you're saying.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting. The findings on entrepreneurs are that if you spend a lot of time figuring everything out beforehand, it doesn't work as well as if you jump into it. Like you have some idea about what you want to do and some of the resources set up and you jump into it because you cannot predict what's going to happen. There's always the thing about basically you're talking about anybody being an entrepreneur, whether it's in starting a club or in starting a school or changing a classroom. You can't predict everything that's going to happen. So you have to be open to rolling with the punches and adapting what you're doing to the changing circumstances. There's a lot of books out there about this. So, I mean, if a teacher wanted to do something, start a school or anything, they can find a lot of resources these days to help them think about how to go about doing it.
Yeah, I think it's also when I talk to teachers, it's the confidence too, just to go do it, like you said, to jump in without knowing all of the answers. Because I think teachers, in it's my experience, many of teachers were kind of like type A. Sometimes we want to know all the answers. We've kind of gone through school and we want to know eight, well, 1 + 1 = 2, and we want to know all the pieces. And it's sometimes, like you said, you have to just jump in and be like, okay, I want to do this, and I know I'll figure it out along the way. And that's something that your story is kind of inspiring. I think to teachers listening who think, okay, I can do this.
Exactly. You cannot predict because you can't predict what's going to happen. So you
Yeah.
have to be able to be adaptable. I mean, this is the thing that makes entrepreneurs who are successful so different from other people is they have this confidence in their ability to take risk and to adapt to new circumstances and not be beating them over the head when they have failure. You know, when something goes wrong, they're not thinking, oh, I'm so terrible. I made such a big mistake. They're thinking, what should I do about it? Being much more forward looking and future oriented than thinking about what they should have done. So, I mean, it's
Yeah,
good to think about what you should have done because then you'll learn from it, but not beat yourself up over that.
yeah, I had someone on recently who talked about like failure isn't final. And I think that's a big piece that you're kind of saying is like you make a mistake and you kind of learn from it and you move on. It's not the end of the world.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've actually been challenged. I mean, I think this new chapter, it sounds like with Reliance College, has been a new experience for you in terms of learning. And one of the pieces that you have recently been working on is accreditation. Can you talk a little bit about what that process has been like and any tips you have for navigating that if a teacher's wanting to become accredited?
Well, in the state of Illinois, where I'm in, you actually can't get accredited for 3 to 5 years after you've opened. And I guess that's to prove that you're well enough established that you're going to continue. What you have to do, however, to open is you have to go through this rigorous process with the Illinois Board of Higher Education to get approval to operate. And so they have lots of documents that you have to fill out, whether it's creating a whole catalog, showing what your library is going to be like, the budget, who your faculty are, the rationale of your curriculum, the rationale for it. So that can take quite a long time to create. And the state of Illinois takes 9 to 12 months to approve it once you've submitted everything.
It's a long process.
Yeah. And then once you open, then you apply to an accrediting agency and they give you a kind of a temporary, I forget what they call it, approval or overseeing you initially. And then after you've been open this 3 to 5 years, then you eventually go through the whole process of accreditation.
So opening a college is a little more like steps than opening the Montessori school. It sounds like there was a little more red tape to jump through.
A lot more. A
Yeah.
lot more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Illinois is very laissez-faire in some respects about opening private schools. You have to be open a certain number of hours per year. You have to be non-discriminatory. You have to follow the health code and the fire code. There's one more, but it's completely non-academic, the requirements. So
So opening this college and being part of the accreditation process, has it taught you things about founding that you didn't think about before, other than like kind of the processes and or
the annoyance of a lot of regulation,
yeah.
the process of having to raise funds, since I had basically funded the school myself to get it started. The process of raising funds is a huge endeavor. Getting to know people, making your case to them, persuading them, getting your whole project publicized. That's
Yeah. Yeah, it is. You're going to be opening a college pretty soon. What is the opening date looking like for you?
we're aiming to open next fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is coming up pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been it's really been inspiring hearing your story, opening all the way from elementary and then moving into this college level. What do you think about this vision for the future? Do you see a vision where maybe more teachers or parents become founders? And what does that look like, do you think, for the future of education?
I think it would be fantastic. I think the more different kinds of schools that we have and for children everywhere, the better, because this way it can serve many different kinds of people, right? If you have a lot of options. And the private schools, the good thing about the private schools is they're much more responsive to the needs of the parents and the children than the bureaucracy of public schools. The bureaucracy of public schools makes it much harder unless you have a very small school district in which there's a lot of local input. Those kind of public schools can be much more adaptable than the larger ones. So when you're talking about serving the needs of the children, the teachers who have a vision to do something different and can go out and do it, even if they start in a small way, it can make a real difference in the lives of lots of people.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about the possibility of just opening different schools and giving parents and students different options for education. I think that's what you did with your Montessori school and now Reliance College. So, as we kind of close today, are there any final thoughts that we haven't covered about founding a school that you'd like to share with teachers today?
It's hard, but it's very rewarding because when you see the children thriving, it's just really touches your heart. And I mean, if you're a teacher at heart, that's what you want to see. So it's quite rewarding.
Yes. Yes, I love that little ending here. We have some fun questions I always ask for the teacher audience to get to know you better. The first question is favorite teacher lunch?
Favorite teacher lunch? Pizza from our local pizza place.
Yeah. Your best behavior management tip for a classroom.
Organize the classroom in a way that the children can be self-disciplined.
Yeah. A teacher that made a difference in your life.
My high school history teacher, Mr. Roach.
The last lesson you taught.
This lesson I taught was on James Madison's Federalist Number 51.
Wow. So history really came through there for the history teacher. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Marcia, for sharing. I'm sure they're going to want to reach out to you and kind of learn more about you. Is there somewhere the audience can reach you in terms of an online presence?
Sure thing. So if they go to our website, reliancecollege.org, they can send a message there. And I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
And I will link the link down below. You guys can connect with Marcia. So
Very good.
thank you so much for being here. And I'm excited to hear from the teachers watching if they're thinking about starting something, whether it's a program or a school, and hearing your story. I know it's going to give a lot of inspiration to them. So thank you
I'm happy
again.
to help anybody if they want advice or information. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.